Hi, welcome to this SQL tutorial video. Today we're going to look at nested or sub queries. I want to go through a few examples and show you some of the rules when setting up nested and sub queries. So on screen I've got a piece of SQL that gets me data from 4 tables, goes to the order header table to get me the order header details, goes to the order detail table to get me some aggregate information. So I want to know the amount of actual items ordered, the total value of all the items ordered, and the last time that the details were modified, or at the latest time rather. Then it goes to the customer table, because in order to get the actual customer information for the person table, it's got to go via the customer table for joining reasons. So if I run this, I get the data there, as you can see it. Now, looking at the results on screen when it finishes running. So looking at the results on screen, it looks like a table. So if I just do select star from sales order header, there's a list of columns and rows, and if I run this, it returns the same kind of thing. Actually, sorry, it's worth noting that I'm using the AdventureWorks database from 2014, just if you wanted to look at this yourself. So because it is a list of rows and columns and essentially looks like a table, we can treat it like a table. So we can do select star from, and then syntactically you've got to surround the query with circular brackets, rounded brackets, and I'm just going to tab these across with the tab button just so you can see that it's within these rounded brackets. Now that isn't enough. If I try and run that, it's gonna shout at me, because there's a few things I need to do in order to complete this nested select. First of all, it has to have an alias, so I'm going to give it an alias of ij for inner join. But also, each column has to have an alias too. So because these three are aggregate columns, when I ran them separately, you'll see those 3 columns don't have an alias, no column name. So I will give each column an alias. Total items, total value, and last modified. If I run that now, everything should be fine. It returns us exactly the same data, 31,465 lines. But it's a nested select, so we can kind of treat it differently, or we can, treat it as a piece. Treat it as a table almost. So now we can say get us ij dot first name, ij dot last name, ij dot last modified. I don't know, and we can run that, and there's some data. We can, because this is essentially a table of data that we're referencing, we can now do an inner join to another table. So we'll do an inner join to the person table on ij dot. I think it's okay. In order to do this join, I need to have. In order to join it to the person, I need to have a column to join it on. Right now, this has got first name and last name. It doesn't have the unique identifier for the person table, which is this field here. So let us add this field here. In order for this to work, the nested select has a group by, so I need to complete that group by with the new column. But now I can say inner join on ij dot business entity equals per dot business entity, and I can say get me the per dot middle name. And I can also say, I can add a where condition where ij dot total items is greater than 50. So that's a nested select in that's kind of selecting something from a big old nested select there. So let's try and do a different example of a nested select. Let's go back to this. This is back to our select again. Let's imagine I want to get the maximum order, the latest order date for the customer that's been returned as part of this select. So I can do that. In order to do it, because I'm already getting data from the orders table, I'm going to have to do a subquery in order to get that data. So this is what we need to do. I'm going to do it here in my select block here. So what data am I going to return? All of these columns and this new one that I'm about to start typing. So in rounded brackets, I'm going to say select max order date from sales order detail, and I'm going to give it an alias. Sales order header. I'm going to give it an alias. Because this is a nested select, I'm going to say sales header n for nested, where, and what we can say is, we can say shn dot customer id equals, and then we can reference our other tables. So if I run that, okay, so now it's saying, because we've got these here, and because we're all of a sudden now looking at a new value that is not part of our group by, we need to add this as part of our group by. So this sh customer ID now needs to be part of this group by block, and that should get it to work. So all of a sudden this sh customer ID, although it's not a column that's getting returned, because we're using it as part of our logic within the select block here, we need to include it in our group by. And now we've got this date here of the last time, the latest order, and we can give it an alias. Latest cost order. Let us look at one more example. So we've got 3 joins there, 4 tables. Let us add another one. This is going to be a nested select as part of our inner joins. So let's do select. We're going to get the same information here. Select max order date from sales header, and we'll give this shn2. But what we're going to do, so because this is in our select, we can just do select max order date and it will return the max order date. This works ever so slightly differently because this is one of the joins. You've got to treat it as a join and give it an alias and give it a proper joining with the on statement. So in order to do that, you need to have a column to join on. So yes, I want to return the maximum order date, but I want to return the maximum order date for the customers. So if I just put shn2.customer ID here, now because we've got this max and this customer ID, I need to do a group by shn2.customer ID. I'm still going to get an error in a second, but essentially that's kind of how we need to write it. So I'm just going to do this, we'll call this ij because it's an inner join, and we're going to do complete complete it to say ij.customer ID equals sh.customer ID. That generally is it, except you can see this is still having a problem here. Within this select, every column's got to have an alias. Because I've got a max, because I've got an aggregate function here, it's not going to have a column header. So I've got to give it an alias, and I call it max order. Now it's happy, and I can run that without doing anything else. But what I can do here now is I can say, now return me ij.maxOrder. But as soon as I'm referencing that, I'm now so now, because this is a column that is not part of the aggregate setup here, I now need to include it in the group by, because I'm actually using it here. So if I do max order here, it now runs, and here you can see the dates are matching between the last customer order and the max order. They're essentially getting the same thing, they're just doing them in different ways. That's the end of this video. I hope you found it helpful.